We've been waiting for this for a while. It's been a long time coming. I've been anxious to get to this day that I know Gami's been waiting for as well. So without further ado, I'm going to get straight into it for this Halloween special. Finally, we're at the point where I'm ready to rank all the Coldplay albums on a tier list, including the one extra EP that I kind of almost count as a separate release. So that's what we're doing today. Hope you're ready and excited for that. That's kind of I'm completely serious, by the way. I really want to do this, but I'm also joking. We are going to be playing Inscription because I know Gami really wants me to play it, and it's Halloween themed, I guess. So we will be doing that. But I was listening through these albums because I had a friend that was like, I'd made like a playlist which had like a whole bunch of songs, and then I recommended like one specific song, and they were like, "Oh, I have Coldplay blocked on Spotify. I can't listen to it." I'm like, "What?" um, and I understand why, because I like from an outsider perspective who doesn't listen to, is like choose to listen to their music. You probably have only heard the really cringe, horrible pop music, especially in the more recent years. So I was going through all the albums. I'll explain the tiers. I was going through all the albums, and like just like kind of rediscovering some of them, trying to give some of it a second chance, and we'll see how that goes. We'll discuss. And in addition, I did discover some old stuff. There's an extra Ghost Stories EP that I really liked. And there's like the first two EPs before Parachutes that I quite liked as well. I just don't know them well enough to put them in the ranking, so I haven't included them. But they're worth checking out as well. So I don't know if we're going to start from the start or not. I think I might start with my beginning. So my beginning was Milo Xylotto. That's the kind of my introduction to Coldplay, and we might go forward from there. In terms of the tiers, I've named them all after Coldplay songs, if you couldn't already tell. Miracles meaning just like it is a collection of music that I find just incredible and fascinating, and a miracle that it exists, I guess. Always in my head is like pretty top tier. Always got these songs in my head a lot. Sky Full of Stars is more like it's a quite good little collection of things. Like it's not like, I don't know. That's probably a phrase that can be interpreted quite broadly, but for me, it's like a sky full of stars is kind of what you expect, but it is really nice to look at. You know what I mean? Like, it is really nice to go out and look at a sky full of stars, even though it's pretty normal. Good Feelings. I know it sounds really positive, but it's kind of. I originally named it Old Friends because I anticipate most of the old albums are gonna be closer to this, or maybe not actually. Old Friends wasn't the right word, the right phrase. So I went to good Feelings. It means there's stuff in it that I like that gives you some good feelings, but it's also like, like it's kind of, it's on the lower end. I don't know, that doesn't really make much sense, but it's because most of Coldplay I actually do enjoy, even if I don't think it's their best work. And then the last tier is obviously Shiver, which is just music that makes me just cringe and is the reason that people don't like Coldplay. Although it's kind of. Yeah, Good Feelings is basically the mid tier. Maybe it's not the best. I struggled to find a fitting name for all of these tiers. This is the best I could come up with for now, anyway. I know that it'd probably be more accurate if I did a song by song tier list, because like even on the good albums, there are songs that might individually put in the Shiver tier. Maybe or close to, or further down anyway, but overall I just want to rate the albums because I feel like Coldplay is actually like almost mastered like the art of an album. I say almost because there's one standout failure among them, which we'll get to. Other than that one, I feel like every album works really well front to back, and that's kind of what made me fall in love with them when I first heard Milo Xylotto. It's I love the way they work with gapless tracks running into each other, and just I don't know. I think I didn't really used to listen to like heaps of pop music or anything, so this was kind of some of the first pop and alternative pop, I guess, that I'd really started listening to, because I before that I was pretty basic. um I don't know what I listened to before then. Like, I was into a lot of like old kind of poppy rock, more I would say more poppy rock stuff. Like, I was into like Foo Fighters, Paramore, that kind of stuff. And then kind of, yeah, this album introduced me to more dancey, fun music that I probably hadn't been so into before. Um, I used to call it one of my favorite albums of all time, but I would say like when I did the re-listen, the first 3 or 4 tracks are just killer, like really good stuff. Um, and then it kind of tapers off a little bit. So for all those reasons, I'm gonna put it in the second top tier, always in my head, because it's really really great album. Um, but well, actually, for me, it's a really favorite album. Actually, I think if I do think about it more critically, I wouldn't actually call it a really really great album. But there's some really really great stuff in it in terms of the structure of the album and everything. I think that kind of makes it better than just the individual songs. Because a lot of these songs that I would never ever choose to listen to if I wasn't listening to the album. Whereas on other albums, there's quite a few songs that I would listen to individually. Um, Next on the list, I might go with Viva La Vida. Because I think I would have started listening to this before Ghost Stories came out. And I am using the Prospect Marks edition. I don't know where I got this music when I was younger, but like I was like sharing my older brother's like iTunes library or whatever. So whatever tracks he had, he didn't have all of the album, and he had like a mix of the two, the original album and the Prospects March EP, kind of combined. So that's kind of the way I experienced this album and how I have it in my head. I did listen back to both individually, but I still felt as a whole they kind of worked together. So I'm gonna rank them at the same time. Honestly, despite having maybe 3 or 4 tracks that I love, like I love 42, Death and All His Friends / Life in Technicolor. They kind of go together. Um, and it's kind of, off the top of my head, those are the only songs I actually love on this album. Viva La Vida is a great song, obviously, but it's one of the well-known great songs. I would say this one gives me good feelings, but there's actually a lot in it that I don't necessarily love and kind of feel a little bit skippable, if I'm completely honest. Specifically, when I re-listened to this, well, actually, I kind of only properly listened to the album on its own for the first time. And when I heard Cemeteries of London, and I realized I don't think I've ever heard this song before, and I really wasn't that into it. So yeah, that might surprise Coldplay fans. A lot of Coldplay fans really rate that album highly. I might need to listen to it a few more times. Like I say, 42 and Death and All His Friends, I like top tier Coldplay songs for me, but they're not enough to lift it up completely. And so I kind of didn't even go back for the original 3 albums until much later. So I'm gonna go forward. So 2014, Ghost Stories comes out, and this was when I was just like hype on Coldplay. You feel like Viva La Vida isn't remembered that well. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't like spend that much time in Coldplay circles, but recently I've just been looking at message boards and stuff and like seeing most people tend to think of it as really good. Like, for example, I was reading a lot of like everyday life discussion threads because I'm really interested in discourse around that album, and people were saying like it's their best since Viva La Vida. So a lot of people think of it as greater than Milo Xyloto, which is for me like definitely a step up, I guess, in terms of the overall album experience. But it's also before, the thing is, all the first 4 albums are kind of before they really, really got big, like in the pop scene. I feel like they became definitely, from what I'm aware of, they became like well known worldwide, probably in the second or third album or something. And I remember hearing there was an interview they talked about Viva La Vida was actually their biggest tour before the current tour. So they're obviously very big at that time. But they didn't really have a lot of like what is now known as like the Coldplay pop songs. So Paradise, I'd say, is like the one that kind of skyrocketed them in like the pop radio kind of area of you know, that side of the world that kind of pushes them into like everyday conversation, you know, or made them known beyond just people who are fans of music, I guess. Viva La Vida song was a smash hit. Okay. I probably wasn't around or conscious of what was going on in music at that time, but that makes sense. But I feel like, yeah, at least I wasn't aware of them at all until Paradise. And then since then, they've been doing massive stadium shows, and now, like, it's since then and Head Full of Dreams that they... I wasn't born yet. Believe it or not, I was born before Parachutes. um, but yeah, they became known as like the stadium lights and everything show with Miles Loto and Head Full of Dreams, I'd say. Anyway, this is on my, as you can tell, relatively little knowledge of Coldplay prior to Miles Loto, but anyway, I'm rambling a million times more than I should be. Okay. Ghost Stories. Ghost Stories, I think, is a little bit underrated. Probably. Well, again, I don't look at that much discourse, but I don't really hear it talked about or anything. And the other thing is they didn't tour it because it's not a very upbeat album. It has kind of a special place for me. I think it came at a time where it just hit very, very right emotionally for me. But I wouldn't quite say it's all in my head, always in my head. So quite fittingly, this one is A Sky Full of Stars. It's a really wonderful view and a poignant emotional experience at times. Ironically, I think A Sky Full of Stars is easily the worst song on the album. I enjoy it, but it's just such a stark contrast to what the rest of the album is. It almost doesn't feel like it fits. But it's just like, it's that record. It's like every record they're like, well, we have to make one pop song. Even though I think Magic is a really good song that I think was on radio and stuff as well, but yeah, they had to make one big hype hit. Agree, Magic best song, absolutely best song on it. Although I think Oceans and Midnight, probably like super underrated songs. Probably not the songs that people really listen to much, but like the whole kind of middle section of that album just has like this really interesting vibe. Okay. And then I'll go with Head Full of Dreams. Sorry. Head Full of Dreams, kind of in the same vein, is kind of what this tier exists for. It's A Sky Full of Stars because it's really nice to look at, it's really nice to listen to, but there's nothing on it that I really say like is top tier Coldplay, except maybe Up and Up. I feel like Up and Up's a really good song that I like, but I don't even know if it's a top 10 Coldplay song for me. I don't know, but like overall, it's kind of a well-formed album, and it has lots of good energy and fun vibes, I guess. So that's kind of where it sits. But it's like, it's kind of the run-of-the-mill Coldplay. It's kind of like the most average or mid-tier kind of level Coldplay for me. This one's interesting. The Kaleidoscope EP is, I think, a more interesting and better release than the Head Full of Dreams album. I would honestly almost be tempted to put it in Miracles tier, which would almost be fitting. Because this EP has 4 brand new songs in it, all of which I love, or I think are really great. And 2 of them are probably my favorite couple of my favorite Coldplay songs. With All I Can Think About Is You and I've forgotten the name of the other one. Hypnotized. Love those songs. And I'm like shocked that they're not like well-known Coldplay songs because they're so good. Especially Hypnotized. Like that should be like as big as Fix You. It's probably not as much of a sing-along, but it's like, yeah, top tier for me. However, the problem with this EP is exactly what Kami has just pointed out. It has a version of something just like this, which is one of the most frustrating and annoying songs that Coldplay has their name on. Not a Coldplay song. But they play it at like all their I don't know if they play it anymore, but they probably played it a lot in stadiums and stuff. But like the problem is they call it a Tokyo remix, but it's not a remix. It's just a live performance of the song, which when it's a DJ song is only half a live performance. They do something different with the guitar, I believe. That's the main difference. So maybe that's why they called it a remix. Because I'm presuming that they didn't remix it and then play a remix live. I think they just played the song the way they wanted to play it live, and that had like a different feel with the guitar. Maybe they had a bit of like Japanese inspiration in there, so that's why when they played it in Tokyo, I don't know, maybe it's kind of a unique performance. But I just hate it. I just hate that song so much, and hearing a live version of that song is just so dull and boring. Like the EP wouldn't be nearly as bad if they just had the Chainsmokers original version just as part of the EP. That wouldn't even be that bad, but putting the remix on, it's just like, ugh. But because of those other songs, it's always in my head. It still is there. I actually just on my Apple Music library, I just have the other one, the something just like this. I just have it removed. Because you can do that. You can just get rid of songs you don't want. So I sometimes just forget it's even on there. You say it's your guilty pleasure song. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can even pretend to enjoy it. I tried to. I literally tried to. When I listened to it, for the first time in forever, I listened to the song on the EP, and I was just like, ugh. That individually belongs in Shiver, that track. Okay. I think I might go back. Oh, no, I won't go back yet. I'm going to go Everyday Life. I kind of didn't... I listened to bits and bobs of the first 3 albums, like, at times, but I never really fully went into them until after Everyday Life. So next for me is Everyday Life. And this is... like... I run out of words to describe this album sometimes. I was floored when I heard this for the first and second and 59th time. I love this album so much. There's no surprise. It's the top tier. I was almost going to call the top tier Everyday Life because it kind of... well, obviously, it's the... spoilers, I think it's the only one that's going to be in the top tier. But yeah, it's... everything about it is like the opposite of what people think of when they think of Coldplay, which is why part of which why I loved it, because I was getting a little bored with this, like a little bit too much poppy flavor, I guess, even though that's what got me into them in the first place. I feel like it kind of they kind of, what's the word, distilled, is that the right word, muddled their own brand by like just going too hard on what they were successful with, and kind of like making music just for stadiums and stuff, which kind of, we'll talk about it more with the Music of the Spheres, but I feel like I understand why they're going and they kind of push in that direction now, but it kind of wasn't why I wanted to listen to Coldplay, because I used to say I would never want to hear Coldplay live, because I really love like good production on an album, and that's why I kind of really like the Malo Zalotto. That's kind of, I hadn't heard music like that on an album, but I was not interested in hearing that live. I tried to listen to like the live performance album or something of that one, and it just sounded kind of terrible. Just like, it doesn't sound like something that reverberates very well in a stadium, to be honest. Like, the instrumentation and stuff doesn't sound that good. I feel like Chris Martin's just really exhausted when he sings a lot of the time, those big songs. I understand why people want to go, but like, I, as a fan of music, I didn't want to hear it. Um, but Everyday Life changed that. That changed what I thought about. Well, that changed me wanting to see them originally at first. Um, you really appreciate the looser sound in Everyday Life. Feels like a band that's genuinely curious about songwriting. Yeah, for sure. It's like it's the maybe the first album since maybe X and Y where like they were just fully writing. Oh, actually, Ghost Stories. Sorry, I forgot about Ghost Stories. Okay, first album after Ghost Stories, which is only two after, but one of the albums where they felt like they were writing songs because they wanted to write songs for to tell things and to speak emotionally and talk about their feelings, I guess. Um, and like the instrumentation and everything is just so much more interesting than the typical pop stuff. And the writing and the lyrics are just like really uh, impactful, and they mean a lot. And it just makes you wonder, like, if they can say this, why aren't they spending more time on this type of songwriting? But I'll get more into that because I've been trying to learn about that. Coldplay Live is one of the best concerts you've ever been to, even though you're not a mass fan. Oh yeah, and I get it. I get it. Now, I'll talk about it at the end. But I think I now do want to see them live eventually, just not right now. And I didn't in the past. I wanted to, when I heard this album, I wanted to hear Everyday Life live. I would do anything to hear them play that album front to back. The same reason that I want to hear American Idiot live is not because I really give a shit about Green Day. I don't really. You know, I just love that album specifically. And I think front to back is like a fantastic album. And same for Everyday Life. It's like, wouldn't say I even love Coldplay as a band, but this album is just god tier for me. Um, and it's also it's the album that I would say, if you're like a Coldplay detractor or someone who just doesn't think you like Coldplay, you don't think you like Coldplay. This is like the album to listen to if you just want to listen to one album. I'm gonna eventually make a playlist with like I've collected something like 40 songs or 45 songs or something of like songs that I think are actually worth listening to, but there's still a lot of pop stuff in there that I really like. So this is like the anti-pop. It's the anti-Coldplay album. I think a lot of their live appeal is Chris, his incredible audience coordinator. He does seem really fun. Like he seems like he's like, yeah, like you say, really good with the audience and just like he is very energetic. I think that at least in what the stuff that maybe he's better now. From stuff I've heard more recently, he actually sounds really quite good. But in the past, when I listened to like him performing live, it just vocally he just didn't sound like he had the physical energy to perform the songs the way they needed to be sung, I guess, or like it was just a step down from hearing it on the album. So why would you see it live? But I think so much of it is the actual physical experience of that tour. Alright, so now I'm going to go back. Because I think it was after this that I was like, oh man, okay, I should listen to the older albums. And I would say I'm still honestly not as familiar with the albums as I'd like to be. But I've listened to them through a few times, and when I listened to them all this week, I was surprised how many individual songs I was like, damn, I actually do love this song. And I've heard it a lot, but I hadn't realized how much I loved it. So I'm going to go Parachutes, I think is always in my head. Oh, you know what? I'm thinking about it. I think it's The Sky Full of Stars. There's like maybe one or two songs that are in my head a lot, but actually overall, it's kind of it makes sense to be in the most mid tier because it's kind of the beginning, it kind of sets the stone, or sets the threshold, I guess, the expectation, and so therefore it meets the expectation, but it doesn't necessarily exceed above it. Whereas I think their second album did exceed that expectation, so that's why I think this one is second tier. I think straight out the gate, the music just feels more interesting to me. Um, so that's why that one's in second tier. And then X and Y, when I re-listened to X and Y, I was surprised how much I didn't love it as much. So I'm going to chuck it there in good feelings. There's still a lot there that I like. I think Swallowed by the Sea might be one of my favorites from that album. But these three, I'll be honest, they kind of blur together a little bit. Politic is one of the coolest openers. I really love it as an opening track. And that kind of, I love when an open track just sets the mood for the album. And like when I think of these albums, Milo Zalotto, Ghost Stories, Head Full of Dreams, and Rush of Blood to the Head, I think have the strongest opening tracks. Because they really set the tone and the mood, and they kind of carry through. But yeah, I can't talk too extensively about those albums just because I don't know them intimately enough. But that's my general feeling on them. And then we just get to one of the like biggest disappointments of my life. I was so high on Coldplay after Everyday Life. I bought the t-shirt, which I still wear and still love. I bought a bunch of socks. They have Coldplay socks for a bunch of the albums. And yeah, I still love those socks, but they are also, I was like, well, I mean, they're back. They're back in their like groove. They're making good music again. So I'll pre-order Music of the Spheres on cassette. There was, luckily for me, an issue with the shipment or something. It was delayed. They couldn't get it to me, and then it was after that the album actually came out on streaming. So I gave it one listen, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" I regret deeply ordering the album because it had been delayed. I sent them an email, asked them to refund it because it hadn't been shipped. So lucky I got that refunded, but I still got the shirt and the socks, which I really love. I think I got Everyday Life on CD as well, and then eventually I got it on cassette. This album for me like is stunningly bad, or at least from what I expected from Coldplay at that time. I listened to it in full for the second time ever a couple of days ago. And I would say I'm not as harsh on it as I was when I first listened to it, but I still don't think I don't like it very much. I just think it's extremely boring pop music. A lot of people really rave about Coloratura, however you meant to say that. I think it's a good song, but like even when I first listened to it, I just thought that is like a mid-tier song on a regular Coldplay album. Like that is easily the best song on this album, but it's still pretty mid-tier Coldplay. So no surprises. This is in Shiver. This is why I now don't want to see them live. I am sad that their priority, like, okay, for me personally, it's not the experience I want. I understand why it's an experience that a lot of people want. I think it works well for them, obviously. It's one of the most successful tours probably of all time. But it's not the kind of music I want to listen to live. And that's pretty much what they're playing. They're playing this album. They're obviously now playing Moon Music and some of the hits like Viva La Vida and Fix You. Like that's what they play on their shows now. They don't play probably a lot of what I would call the good deep cuts. Oh man, we've been 30 minutes. We've reached the end of that background music. Hold on. Okay, I don't know what else to what other music to play, so I'll just refresh. Um, yeah. I lost my train of thought. Pop music, pop music, pop music. The stadium tour, the stadium show, successful tour. This is me trying to retrace where I was, what I was saying. Um, so they play these songs for the stadium shows. That's right, and they play these for the stadium shows with a few of their older, well-known hits like Paradise and Viva La Vida, whatever. Um, and almost nothing from everyday life. They at the beginning of the tour played Orphans a few times. Um, and Orphans is a really interesting song. It's one of my favorite songs because it's very upbeat and a fun song, and it is what you expect from a Coldplay album sonically. But lyrically is one of the saddest songs that I think they've ever written. And I almost every time I hear it, I cry. Um, like especially when I try and sing along to it, I struggle sometimes. Um, and I think it's not really the type of song you should play at a big fun stadium show because it sounds way too fun for what it is lyrically. And I think it would have been really cool if they kind of stripped it down for the live performances and he just was there on piano, maybe some soft guitar kind of, and he sung it lower pitch because I think, or lower key or whatever, because I think that was one of the reasons he struggled singing it because it's quite high at the chorus. But he could sing it much lower, and I think it could have way more emotional impact, especially at a live show. I think that's what a live show like that needs. Is like the most emotional song that they play is probably like "Fix You," but it's still like a big hit that everyone enjoys. But I feel like you need a solemn song in a set to like bring people down and have people just connect more emotionally with the lyrics and everything. That's my opinion. Um, I know now they've got All My Love, which might fit that vibe, but that's also kind of sing alongy. They're all written to be sung along now. Which leads us into music. This was kind of I like this overall. I'd say I like it. I think it's what when I heard it the first time, I was like, this is what I think. This is what I expected from Music of the Spheres. This is what I thought Music of the Spheres was gonna be, I guess, and it technically is like volume 2 of Music of the Spheres. So I like the kind of way they're branding it, and apparently they're doing one more Spheres album before like a final album. Apparently they're definitively only going to finish off at 12 albums, which I think is quite interesting. And that makes me quite excited for the future to hear what that album will be, but also what touring will be like after that album. So music, I'm going to give it good feelings, because there's still a few tracks that I'm just like, this is kind of boring and I don't really care. But there are some good feelings. I like the track Good Feelings. I think it's fun. It's not anything special. It's probably not even better than anything on like Head Full of Dreams. But I still like it. It's fun. And I'm glad. We Pray is just like surprising that they put it on the album, because it feels like similar to something just like this. Or I forgot to even talk about all the collabs on Music of the Spheres, like My Universe and okay, Let Somebody Go wasn't that bad. Actually, that was okay. But the ones that are like mostly feel like somebody else's song is just confusing why they put it in the middle of their own album. I don't know. But it sounds like an Imagine Dragons song. Yeah, kind of. I don't know if I'll go that far. But it just feels like and it is a collaborated song with some other artists, and it kind of feels like it. You know how sometimes artists release a song that's not on anyone's specific page? It's like a collab between all the three of them or whatever. It just feels like it should have been like that. And then it could have been on the bonus. It could have just been on the bonus version of this album, which, by the way, we'll talk about. I'm surprised how long I'm talking about this. I'm actually quite passionate about some of this stuff. Yeah. That kind of sums it up, but I forgot what I was saying about Mew Music. overall it feels better because it feels like a Coldplay album. Like how I was talking about before, how that pretty much all of them, at least from Viva La Vida onwards, kind of had a structure. They went front to back, and it just kind of felt good. It felt like it had an experience. Music of the Spheres broke that for me, and it just felt like a collection of stuff that they just threw in a can. Because they're like, oh, we've done a few songs. Oh, we'll put this one. Oh, let's put My Universe in there. It didn't feel like they wrote an album. So New Music came back to that, and I think brought that back. So that's why I like it a lot more overall. And I'd like to listen to it some more and hopefully get more of those tracks in my head. Because I think All My Love and One World are like good. I like them. I think Feels Like I'm Falling in Love is not as bad as I thought it was when I heard it first. But it's still just like, it's another pop hit. But it's basically just a better version of Higher Power in terms of like it just replaces Higher Power as like a better version. That's why I say New Music is just what Music of the Spheres should have been. I haven't listened to the two most recent albums. My ranking is spicy. Gami got a ranking in here. Okay. Oh, I completely forgot to put the chat on here. I'm so sorry. My chat hasn't been on screen. I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize. Oh, I feel like a nunce. I like having it on screen, like as a record of it, because if I like put this as a VOD on YouTube, the chat's not there. It's only there on the VOD on Twitch, right? This is because this is an old view that I forgot about. Damn it. Okay, 1 second. Let me just steal the chat window from here. And go back. Paste. Which is annoying because I've done tier lists before with chat turned on. So I know what I did to it. But here's a record of the chat. Just so we all know what we were saying and responding to. Okay. Okay, so haven't listened to the two most recent albums. So here we go. Okay, Gami's ranking. Number 1, so top to bottom. Number 1, Rush of Blood. Interesting. Great, I love it. Number 2, Milo Zoloto. I'm honestly a little bit surprised that you have it that high. 4, Parachutes. 5, Viva La Vida. 6, Everyday Life. 7, Ghost Stories. Okay, I understand why you might just not be into Ghost Stories. And Head Full of Dreams at the bottom. I feel like that's pretty valid. That's pretty typical, and I understand almost all of that, except Everyday Life. I know it's not for everyone, and it's very much not what Coldplay normally puts out, but I'm surprised that you would rate it low if you have listened to it enough. I feel like you should give it a small listen. You like all the top 6. Okay, good. Okay, so if you put them in a tier list, are they all going to be like in the top 2 tiers for you? The top 6, I mean, are going to be in your top couple tiers? You should do this on your own stream, maybe. Except you don't do it on PC, but whatever. You know what? Tier Maker should make a PlayStation 5 app so that people can do it on console. The other thing I wanted to do, I want to briefly just, because one of my favorite things about Coldplay, in addition to how I was talking about the structure of albums and stuff, something that goes hand in hand with that is the album covers. And I just wanted to take just 1 minute to scroll through, because when you look on tier lists, there's this tiny little thing that you just can't really see it. So I wanted to take a minute to just appreciate it. Simplistic album cover, really like this. This one, I don't know what's really going on here, but it's cool. I like it. It suits, and it feels like the album. I love when an album cover feels like what the album sounds like, if that makes any sense. X and Y is probably the most like bland and nothingness, and maybe that's why I forget most of this album. I don't know. I feel like I strongly like relate the sound to the visuals sometimes. Viva La Vida, this is obviously the combined version of them, and the one that I kind of have mostly been familiar with. Nothing special, I guess, on that version of it. Milo Zoloto, I feel like is pretty decent album art. I like it a lot because it just feels crisp, but it's got this like pop in the middle. It's got this like burst of color that's really fun. Head Full of Dreams. Oh no, not that. I'm forgetting the order. Ghost Stories. I feel like for the first time today, I noticed how detailed this is, and it's really, really beautiful. I think this is when they started like getting really artful, I guess, and intricate with the album art, which I really like. And I like that it kind of encompasses the album in terms of the songs. Like, they've got the sky full of stars in the background, they've got the oceans, you could say it's at midnight, you could say they've used ink, and there's angel wings, which they don't have a song in there with angel in the title, but they have like a chorus in at the front and last, at the first and last tracks, that kind of sounds like a chorus of angels. So that one's a good one. You'd say Head Full of Dreams is bad. Ghost Stories is average. So none of these say, yeah, that's fair. Most would fall in your B tier, except Rush of Blood in the A tier. Okay, then bottom two are dog shit. So you think, oh, I see. You think Ghost Stories is average. You think Head Full of Dreams is dog shit. That's interesting. Best album art is Parachutes or the actual Viva La Vida cover. Yeah, that's fair. This cover I like a lot because it just has a lot going on. I think it just looks really pretty, but it's not like fantastic, but I think it suits the album because the album's also not fantastic, but it fits well with the vibe. And I think especially the first track, it suits really well. First and last track actually on this album also suits really well with the cover art. Kaleidoscope EP, kind of like an inverse play on, using similar elements from Head Full of Dreams, so that's cool. That's a good one. Every Alive. Yeah, I don't know. I like it a lot. Like, I like it a lot because it tells you what the album is, kind of. It's like, this is different. This is not a colourful album. This is not a colourful, fun Coldplay album. I love the sunrise and sunset kind of things, and the moon and the sun imagery. And there's the obvious international feel that it's giving. It's immediately letting you know that it's more explorative of the world than just the kind of typical stuff. And then there's this one, which I didn't even download in high res because I just didn't care. And then we move on. And I really like that. I think it looks really pretty. And I think this honestly increases my enjoyment of the album just by like it being quite pretty. What I don't like is that there is what they call full moon edition of the album, where they just make the sky pink and they don't make the moon a full moon. I believe it's partially like, I think, well, at least the moon side of it's an actual photo. I think they probably used some sort of lens filter or something to like make the rainbow appear. Maybe that might have happened like in camera, I'm not sure. But they could have just got another photo of a full moon to put in the background to have a full moon version in the full moon edition of the artwork, you would think. You unironically love Music of the Spheres album cover? I don't know. I don't get it. This, again, encapsulates the album because it's extremely boring. And it's just a lot of random scattered ideas that kind of mean nothing. I know that there's some music theory about spheres. Like, if you just Google Music of the Spheres, like you'll find these like weird old scientific drawings or something about music theory and stuff. Which is interesting, and I assume that's part of why they drew it like that. But yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Like, because it's meant to be like a fictional solar system, and this is kind of getting into like what I've been learning more recently. It's like, this is like a fictional solar system that they've set up to tell stories from like alien, I guess, fictional alien perspectives, or what music is supposed to sound like from aliens, which I would say it doesn't really sound like music from aliens, most of it. I don't know. It just sounds like, I don't know. It's hard to describe. But it doesn't look like a solar system because the objects don't really look like they have orbits and stuff that makes sense. So I don't know. It doesn't fully make sense to me. But yeah, that's kind of getting into like what I was saying about them touring they're going for these like big concepts, and so when I listened to Zane Lowe's interview with Chris, kind of talked about the kind of the reason for everyday life and why that came where it did is because they wanted to say all these things, obviously, but it's actually not necessarily what they want to do musically, because they musically are more interested in exploring these weird concepts about aliens and feelings of love and all of this kind of stuff, which is fair, and I think I understand. I understand now more what they're doing. I still don't really like it, but I get it, and I understand why people like it, and I'm glad that it exists in a form that a lot of people can really, really enjoy. So going forward, I think that kind of shifts what I want to hear from them. You're gonna sound like an old boomer. I don't think you do. You sound like pretty. It doesn't sound like an old boomer. It just sounds like, someone who's writing for a music magazine and has listened to, music for years and years and years, and that doesn't necessarily make you a boomer. It just makes you well informed or well versed in music. But yeah, you think they should be locked in a cabin for a year with zero electricity, access to only acoustic instruments. I mean, that'd be interesting. I mean, do you want them to write the music acoustically, but then take it into a studio and work on it with other instruments, and like production stuff, or do you actually want them to record an acoustic album? Because as I understand it, Milo Zolotta originally was going to be an acoustic album, and then they started writing more kind of poppy stuff, or they had producers kind of turn it into much bigger stuff. Which I think could be a good idea, because if you start the writing process without all of the production and without thinking about what it sounds like in a stadium, I think you get much more authentic sounding stuff, even if you then take it and produce it and work on it. That's probably how you get some of the best sounding songs. Because I think the songs more recently where they've written it for a stadium, like Higher Power and I don't know, what was the other one? Feels Like I'm Falling in Love. Those kind of songs are like, they just know that they want it to sound loud in a stadium. I feel like that's, just not what I enjoy in music. You never want to touch electronic music again. Did a great job of it on Milo, then completely lost track and have too many collaborators, just creates shit-sounding pop music. Yeah, I kind of agree, yeah. Because for Milo, it just sounded like that's what they wanted to make, because they wanted to make it because it sounded cool to them, and they were telling an interesting conceptual story as part of that. But then, like I was saying before, Paradise got really big, they got really successful doing big stadium shows, and then they turned to, well, we got to write more music like this for the stadium. So that's where I think it's kind of fallen off. And that's why, again, I love Everyday Life, because it doesn't feel like that at all. And it goes to show in the fact that they don't play it live. But what I'm hoping desperately happens is that, in addition to the fact that they're putting out a final album within the next 5 years, they'll probably have finished their final album, right? 5 or 6 years. I don't know how long it'll take for the last two, but that's the tour I would probably more like to see, unless, because I'm anticipating that the third volume of Spheres will be pretty much another average album. Hold on, let's put this back on that. But even if it is, I'm also anticipating that the last album will be really good, because I feel like if they're wanting to make a final album, they're gonna really cut through everything. Like, they're gonna make sure it's the best of the best, and everything that they want to say, I would hope, is going to be in the final album. Some people are saying it's going to be a self-titled album, which would be quite interesting for that to be your last album. And then if I like that album, I'd probably like to go hear that tour. But more than that, I hope they tour albums individually. I hope they take up a residence, like at the Sphere, for example, in Las Vegas or other big venues and stuff, and they play one album a night. Maybe not every album, but for example, they would They could do Milo Gelato. They could do Viva La Vida. They could probably maybe they could combine, I guess, a greatest hits of the first three albums, kind of together, kind of like an Eras tour in a way, but individual. And I guess they could do multiple albums per night. Like they could do Milo Gelato and Here Full of Dreams in the same night, and maybe have just a few of the Ghost Stories tracks in the middle, because I feel like I probably would enjoy hearing that front to back, but it wouldn't be a very successful show. That would be like the thing they'd do once, which is what they, I think, did originally. They only, when they played it at least one live show. I feel like they sound very bored right now. Yeah. If they were going to do single albums, they would probably do first three individually. I would understand them doing like an anniversary. Is it? I guess we're at nearly, it'll be 25 years. 25 years. Oh no. No, this year will be 25. I'm bad at math. No, next year will be the 25th anniversary of the first album. So I would understand if they just did a full-on album of just that. That would make sense. Maybe actually the first night, if they were doing it in separate nights, they could just do one night where they do the first three albums. I don't know. But like I would probably enjoy hearing them front to back, but that's not what I'd really want to hear. I would really, really want to hear, more than anything, Everyday Life. But I think I would enjoy hearing Milo Gelato and Head Full of Dreams, because even though there are some pop tracks that are like big ones for them, they don't, at least these days, play a lot of the other stuff that fills in that album, those albums that kind of make them feel like more full experiences. But yeah, Everyday Life front to back. If that ever happened, I will, if possible, do whatever I can to get there. Because, yeah, it upsets me that they never played it, because it's like they don't have faith in their own music. They're only kind of interested in doing what they know is popular, I guess. That's kind of how it feels. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because I know you're obviously pleasing a lot of people. But this is like one of the biggest tours in the world, and they're not taking the opportunity to share some of their best music. I don't know. To me, it just feels like a wasted opportunity. Like they could do an option where, like, they're doing 4 shows, I think, in Melbourne. I'm like, what if they just did 3 shows, but then they did another show like in the middle of those, that was like just deep cuts and Everyday Life. Like some older deep cuts, the ones that people don't usually hear, and then and Everyday Life. I feel like, I know, like, in terms of like the physical logistics of that might be difficult, because obviously the staging and everything isn't going to be set up for it, but it would be just so cool to hear that live. But the other problem is the instrumentation is completely different, so they would need like I'm presuming they would need more band members to do it. So maybe that's why it would need to be as part of a residency. Just tell Chris Martin you're a sick child, like a Make-A-Wish Foundation thing. Your final wish is to hear Everyday Life live. Honestly, yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I don't know how it could ever happen if it did happen. Like I say, if they could figure out like an Eras residency, that'd be really cool. But that means you'd have to go to that place, because I don't think maybe they could tour. I guess they'd be doing residencies potentially in a few different cities, maybe, but they couldn't do as broad of a world tour if they had so many different setups for all the different albums. But that's something I'd probably love to hear. But that's just me spitballing and hoping that they do what's right for the music and not just what they want what the fans want, I guess. But the thing is that if they truly believe they're ending at 12 albums, but they intend to continue touring, they have so much opportunity to just do different things, different types of tours. So it's very possible. It kind of almost opens up more freedom to them if they stop writing albums. Yeah, so I know I'm interested in the future, assuming they continue touring. And yeah, hopefully I'll see them at least once in my life. But right now is probably the worst time to see a Coldplay show for me, because it's the worst collection of music they've ever played live, in my opinion. But anyway, I'm amazed that I somehow talked about Coldplay for an hour. So thank you for coming along the ride and partaking. Um, Leave your thoughts of what your Coldplay album rankings are and things like that. And I don't know if I don't really have plans specifically to do tier lists. I kind of just do these randomly. So stay tuned if you want more tier lists or other things like gaming, which I'm about to do.